Hello everyone, welcome back to Database Design and Development course. In this lesson we will see how we can insert, update and delete data. Previously we saw how to create databases as well as tables. Once we create database tables, we have to add data to the table, and we will have to edit or update the existing data, and sometimes we may need to remove the data, that is deleting. So we will see how we can do these tasks in this section. So inserting data is done by the insert statement of SQL. SQL data manipulation languages category has insert statements. So insert statement flows as insert into table name, and it is followed by column list, and then value list follows. So into and column list and default are the optional keywords and statements. So you can avoid into keyword, rather you can have insert directly followed by table name, and then column list you can give column list, or you can omit. We will see if you omit what to do, and if you add the column list what to do, we will see. The explanation of the syntax is you use insert statement to add a new row to a table. So the insert statement helps us to add a new row to a table, and in the insert clause you specify the name of the table that you want to add the row to, along with the optional column list. As I told, we mentioned the name of the table that we are going to add a row, and it is followed by the column list. You specify the values to be inserted in the value clause. The value clause found here, it specifies the actual values that are going to be inserted into a blank row. So once you use this insert, it gets ready with the blank row, and value list gives the actual values that are going to be inserted or put into the columns, right? If you don't include a column list, it means if you are thinking that this is optional and you are not going to insert mention the list of columns, you must code a value for every column in the same order they appear in the table. So if there are 5 columns in the table, you have to give values for those 5 columns except the identity column, as well as null columns and default value columns. Okay, so if you include a column list, say for example there are 5 columns in the table, and you would like to add a new row, and you would like to add values only for 3 columns. In that instance, you have to specify the column values in the same order they appear in the column list. The values you must give in the same order you make mention in the column list. We will see how we can do that. You can omit columns with the default values and columns that accept null values, as well as a column that is identity. So identity column you must not give any values. So if you have any other columns that assigns default value, you can omit them, and those columns that allow null values also can be left blank. So to insert a null value into a column, you can use null keyword, and to insert default values you can use the default keyword. If all the columns in the table are identity columns, columns with default values, and columns that allow null values, you can code the default keyword at the beginning of the values clause, and then omit the list of values. So we will see how we can implement this in SQL Server Management Studio. Now I have opened our SQL Server Management Studio, and we will see the databases that are available. So databases AP1, AP, and AP3 examples, new AP products and tests there. And let me delete this table AP3. I'm dropping the table, and test also I'm deleting. So the primary table that we are going to work with is accounts payable. Rather than making this table ugly, what we can do is we can create a copy of the tables in this database. So let me show you how we can create a copy of the existing table. So for this purpose I'm going to use accounts payable database. In order to create a copy of the database, we have a syntax like this: select a selection list. In this case we are going to select all, and we are going to select all records from the vendors table, and vendors copy, let me call it vendors copy, and it is going to be copied from vendors table. Okay, so this is the syntax. So select all from into vendors copy from vendors. So actually this is the usual syntax that we use. Select all from vendors. It selects all the records from vendors, and we are going to put the selected records into another table. It is called vendors copy. Okay, let me run this and see what happens. So it says 123 rows affected. So it means the table has been created with duplicate data. Let me refresh this, and we will see here, vendors copy is available. So select all from vendors copy. Let us run this. It shows you, okay, all the data from vendors copy, similar to vendors copy is also there. Okay, so next time if you start we will see how it shows the vendors copy. Select all from vendors copy. Okay, now it is refreshed and updated, so you don't see any red color wavy lines. So with this table we will play with. And another example we can see, say for example we want to select a particular set of rows from a table. Partially we want to say for example we want to apply a criteria where clause, and then we are going to create a new table. In that case we will see select vendor ID, vendor name, vendor city into vendor copy 1 from vendors. Okay, let us run this. It says 123 rows affected. So let me close this and refresh it. So vendor copy 1 is available. Select all from vendor copy 1. Let's run this. It works. Okay, so it shows red wavy line. When we disconnect the database and reconnect it, we will get this out. Previously it was erased once we refresh this SQL sheet. So we will see how we can add here we added 3 columns into a table. So we will see how we can get rows from a table. Select all into vendors copy 2 from vendors where vendor state equal CA. Okay, from a particular state we are going to pick data and copy it into another table. So it is reading 76 rows affected. Okay, so let me run these. Okay, here we see only 76 rows have been taken. All of them are from vendor state California. Okay, even we can apply summary queries to create tables. For example, select all, not all, vendor ID comma sum invoice total into invoice summary from invoices. So says group by vendor ID. Okay, so here we see the vendor ID is selected, and the sum of invoice totals are calculated for each vendors. So for vendor number 1, how many invoices are there, and then their summary is given. Okay, also we will let count vendor ID. Okay, so we will give a name for this number of invoices, and we will give a name for these total. Okay, let's run this. So here you see it has created 34 rows, and the name of the table is invoice summary. Let me refresh this. So invoice summary is here. So let me create a new query. Select all from invoice summary. Okay, let me select this and run. You see, a new table is created. Okay, this is how we create a duplicate tables from existing, copy data from existing table. You can use join statements or summary queries or whatever you like. You can use to create a new copy of the tables available in a particular database. And we will see in the next movie how we can add data to the table that we created here in the name of vendor's copy. Okay, stay with me. Hello everyone, in this movie we will see how we can create a sample table or with copies of data, and insert some rows into the sample table using the insert statement. For this purpose I have opened the accounts payable database, and then I'm going to create a copy of the invoices table. So select all into invoice copy from invoices. Okay, let me run this. So it says 114 rows affected, meaning that invoice copy table has been created. So I'm going to check this out. So invoice copy, it works. Okay, here we will see the update that invoice copy table. Yes, it's here, invoice copy columns. These are the columns available: invoice ID, vendor ID, invoice number, invoice date, invoice total, payment total, credit total, terms ID, invoice due date, and payment due date. Using these structure, we will see how we can insert data into the table. So I'm going to use insert into invoice copy values. The value list follows. Okay, so invoice ID, let me call it 97 or whatever. Okay, 100 or 200, and vendor ID 34. Okay, for this purpose I'm going to use insert into invoice copy. Okay, values, invoice copy. Okay, values list follows. The first one, invoice ID, is the default value, so we will give a vendor ID first. Vendor ID 34, and invoice number is a vacha, so it's going to be within single quotes 1 2 3 4 5 6. So let's, and then the date value comes invoice date. Let us put the date as 2020 January 1st. Okay, invoice date, and invoice total, let us call invoice total as 10,000. Payment total, nothing is paid, and credit total, nothing is there. Term side 15 or term side 15 days, or invoice due date maybe another 1 month, 2020 2, okay, February 2nd. The other value is invoice due date, payment date, due date, let's call it we don't know, so null. Okay, so let's see if it works. Here invoice copy. Okay, we will run this and see what happens. So it says one row affected. It means the data is added. So let us run this. Select all from invoice copy where vendor ID equal 34. So 34 is here. Okay, the last one. So invoice ID is automatically added. Vendor ID 34, 1 2 3 4 5 6, and date is here. Invoice total is here. Payment total, nothing is paid. Credit total is not calculated. Terms ID 1, and invoice date, due date is shown, and payment date we didn't mention because payment was not made, so payment date is not here, is null. So this is how we add data. And if you have more than one set of data, okay, we will see if you have more than one set of data, how we can manage it. Okay, so more than one row of data to be inserted. Let me copy this and paste and paste. Okay, so here vendor ID may be 10. First of all, we will see how many vendor IDs are there. Select all from vendors and run this. So vendor ID 1 2 3. Okay, no problem. So we can use vendor ID 1 first, vendor ID 2, vendor ID 3. Okay, 4 5 6 2 2, and 3 3, and 4 4 4. Okay, and let's call invoice total 20,000, 30,000, and 40,000. Okay, so here what we are going to have is we are going to separate it by a comma. Okay, separate by a comma. This is how we work. Okay, insert values. These values will be separate. This is going to be a separate row. This is another row, and this is another row. Okay, vendor ID 1, vendor ID 2, and vendor ID 3. Vendor ID 3. Otherwise, to make the selection process easy, to show you the example, I will make it vendor ID 1 1 1. Okay, so the difference is we are separating each set by a comma. Okay, let's run this and see. 3 rows affected. It means it works fine. So let me create a query. Select all from invoice copy. Invoice copy where vendor ID equals 1. Okay, execute. Great. So this is how we add more than one rows at a time. Okay, maybe you can have different vendor numbers. Okay, no problem. Just to elaborate you easily, I showed vendor ID 1. Okay, we will see how we can add rows okay, sorry, rows columns with by specifying them. Here we are inserting into entire uh, rows, entire columns are covered. If you want to insert data to a particular column, we can mention the column names here. We will see how to make the such insertion. So let me remove these and we will see the structure of the table. Here we have the table structure, but we can see how the null values are allocated, allowed or not, like that we can see by right clicking on the table name and going to design view, and here the column names, data type, and null value things are here. So only the payment date column allows null value, so other columns you have to give values. Okay, invoice ID is here, and vendor ID is here. Invoice ID is an identity column. Okay, identity column, and others columns you have to give the values. Okay, so we will see how we can give a user insert statement use column list. So insert into invoice copy, and we will give the column list. Okay, we will give the column list. So invoice ID we are not going to mention. First one is vendor ID. Invoice ID is this invoice ID is an identity column, which means it is automatically generated. So we will start with vendor ID. Okay, vendor ID, invoice number, comma, invoice date, invoice total, payment total, credit total, terms ID, invoice due date, payment date. Okay, these are the column names we have. Okay, these are the column names we have, and values. What values are we going to give? So vendor ID may be 2, invoice number 444444. Okay, and date we can give 2020 2 invoice total 1000 rupees, for example. Okay, payment total, nothing was paid. Credit total, nothing credit. And terms ID we can call it 1. You can see from terms table. Okay, you can see from terms table what does this 1 means and then terms ID, and then invoice due date after 1 month. Okay, 21/3, and the payment date, payment was not made. Let me break here so that it is understandable. Okay, so invoice date, due date is here, invoice due date here. Okay, and payment date we call it null. Okay, null. So we will see how it works. Let me check these invoice copy. Okay, okay, and let us run this. Okay, one row affected, which means without any errors it appears, so it worked fine. Let's run select all from invoice copy where vendor ID equal to. Great. Now you can see the data is added. So this is the entire table, invoice table. You can see the last record. Here it is found. So invoice ID is 121. Okay, let's run this again. Okay, 121. It is added. So this is how you make mention of the column names and the values. Say for example, the column names are now in the order. Right, we gave in the order it appears in the table. Rather, you can modify it. You can change the order of the columns if you are specifically mentioning them. So vendor ID, invoice number, and invoice date. Okay, invoice date. Let me cut this and have a comma and place it here. And invoice date, here it is. I'm moving this to the end. Okay, let me call this as 55. Let's run this. Execute. One row affected. So again, select all from invoice copy where vendor ID equals 2. Execute. You see here, although we changed the order, it worked. So but if you are using the table name only without specifying the column, you have to give the values in the order they appear in the column itself. Click here. You have to mention them in the order, the same order they appear in the table here. But if you are mentioning the column names explicitly, means you are writing the names here so that you can give the values in the order they appear in the list. Okay, so here in the order they appear in the table, here in the order in the list. Okay, that's how we insert data to the table. We will see more in another movie with updating, deleting. Until then, goodbye.